What is going on, wrestling fans? Welcome to the Tapped In Indy Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, Heath Mulligan, joined by my co-host, the man behind all the controls, the man behind all that is good in independent wrestling, Mr. Nick McDaniel. Nick, how are you this fine morning?
I'm doing good, man. It's lots to talk about this past week. Specifically, that Georgia Wrestling Spotlight is going to be a hot show this week for sure. And we got a pretty, I don't know if it's a controversial topic this week, but it's I think it'll generate some conversation, that's for sure.
Yes, and fans, as always, if you want to get all the details, all the show notes, get the shows early and all of that, you need to go to patreon.com/tappedoutpod. You can become a free member today. That's where you can watch the Georgia Wrestling Spotlight every single week, where we talk about the shows that just happened and the shows that are coming up in the coming weekend. You also, listen, we have 16 pages of notes today. We cannot get to it all. And when you become a paid member, you'll get those show notes. You'll get the shows early. But again, we thank everyone for their support. Again, patreon.com/tappedoutpod. For all of you watching us on YouTube, make sure, if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and turn on those notifications. That really helps out our algorithm. At least we think so. So go ahead and do that. Nick, it wasn't just a busy weekend in independent wrestling. It was also a busy weekend in national wrestling, as AEW held the Revolution pay-per-view at the Crypto.com Arena in Los Angeles, California. This is one of the few pay-per-views I was not able to watch live. I was on a bus coming home from tour, but a sold-out crowd, a hot crowd, and AEW delivered with some really hot matches on this card.
We kind of, talked a little bit about this before we hit record about how, look, I get it. AEW catches a lot of flack, and look, deservedly so on some of their attendance numbers for TV dynamites or whatever. But I always try to come back and explain to people, like, it wasn't that long ago that WWE was struggling in attendance and things as well. So kind of keep that in mind. But one thing that I always say is, here's the thing. I understand there's a market of people out there that go, I hardly watch the weekly shows at all, but every AEW pay-per-view I watch.
Yes.
Because they almost, and I'm going to put almost always seem like they just knock it out of the park on the pay-per-views.
AEW pay-per-views, to me, they're just start to finish, foot on the gas, just basically every match trying to top the other one. And that's certainly what they try to do here. I mean, when you have a card that features matches like Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher in a steel cage. And here's the thing, like, I'm trying to think back. I don't know if Fletcher has beaten Ospreay yet. Like Ospreay has dominated that feud, at least between the bells. You have Hangman Page getting a huge win over MJF. I mean, these two guys, not even in the title picture, but I would consider both those guys still pillars of AEW. And again, from top to bottom, great wrestling. And now you've got Swerve Strickland back in the title picture, number one contender. Is he next for Jon Moxley? Mm-hmm. Moxley, who takes out, I'm going to call him Edge and Christian, in what turned out to be a triple threat match. The Omega making his return, beating Takeshita. I mean, just think, AEW has been going on for 14 to 18 months without Kenny Omega.
Yeah.
You add him back into the mix, and I think 2025 is going to be a great year for them.
Look, when he came back, I brought that up. I said, listen, this is a key piece to their puzzle. And again, because you have to focus on what their style is. Like, Kenny Omega is like, when they brought in Ospreay, it was another piece of that same, like, this is what they want. Like, this is who they are. I mean, look, Ospreay and Fletcher, Spanish fly off the top of the cage. Like, that's what that base wants. Kenny's going to give you a lot of that similar, like the New Japan style wrestling, and that's what they want. yet one of the biggest stories they've had. And I do tell people this. I have said, listen, if you've not watched because you want something different from AEW, the Tony Storm Mariah May storyline has been just that. Some people think it's too weird for them, and I get it, but you said you wanted different, and it doesn't get much different than this. And they literally told that story over pay-per-view after pay-per-view after show after show and delivered what appeared to be, let's just go with it, it looks like that was the end. So that's what the Titantrons told us. Like, that was the end of that story. And, I know some people are uncomfortable with the, women bleeding and the brutality of it all, but they told that story to the point that that's how you kind of knew it was going to end up. And kudos to them for, again, delivering a really good job on putting that story to bed.
For a promotion that I would say in the past has done matches like that too early in a feud, and certainly independent promotions do that sometimes. They go to the finale too soon. That entire feud was so really well paced, told an amazing story. You talk about people wanting different. One of the things that I've been reading, people were not happy with Okada cheating to beat Brody King. And I'm like, listen, we've seen for the last decade Okada have 5-star matches, 6-star matches. He literally redefined that genre. But we haven't seen Okada cheat to win. So you're giving me something different. You're giving me something I haven't seen before. And, I know we're beating a dead horse here. People that like wish for the demise of AEW probably don't have any friends who are actually in wrestling, because you're talking about when AEW started, whether you like the wrestling or not, it doubled the number of jobs in big time professional wrestling. It doubled the number of people getting a paycheck. And that's a good thing. And again, AEW, the move to, they're on Max this year. So I think they're reaching some new fans. And again, they sold out the arena.
They added Prime Video.
Yes. I saw that.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I explained to everybody, like, look, they're going out of their way to grow. At the press conference, somebody asked Tony Khan about Ring of Honor's TV deal, and he just said, hey, I'm just waiting for one that makes sense. Like, we've been in discussions with people, but at this point, he probably could have taken a bad deal at this point, but he wanted a good deal. And that's what that's what he says, and I'm taking him for, at his word, that he wants a good deal that makes sense for both parties.
Do you think we become so accustomed to breaking news that when there's a lull, we just think, well, they're not doing anything. They're not even trying. And it's like, no, you can't really comment on ongoing negotiations. You're trying to get one person to bid against another person. So, well, you mentioned all the different places you can watch AEW. But, Nick, I noticed you got your Lytmi Cozy Fit G1s today, and that's a great way to listen to professional wrestling and podcasts like this.
Yeah, dude, I'm actually really enjoying them. Look, I could sit here and rattle off all of the details, but take a listen and you'll hear why I love the Lytmi Cozy Fit G1s. Wrestling fans, if you're traveling, you're training in the gym, or you're just kicking back and you're listening to the Tapped In Indy podcast, you're going to need earbuds that work for you. And that's why we rock the Lytmi Cozy Fit G1 earbuds like you see Nick wearing on this episode. These things are great. They get you more focused. The open-ear design cuts down low-frequency noise, keeps all the distractions away, so that way you can lock in on what you're trying to do. Thing comes with 4 mics, AI noise filtering, so the background noise just kind of disappears for you. So all of your calls are going to sound sharp and professional. These things are super lightweight. They're comfortable, man. You can see Nick wearing them all throughout this episode. They are only 0.2 ounces, so that way they're really designed to fit any ear shape. They don't really go in the ear. They're just out of the ear, so they fit really good, and that's something Nick's a big fan of. Man, they also give you 10 hours of charge, 30 hours total, and you get a quick 10-minute charge, man. Boom. You got a couple more hours that you can stay locked in to whether you're working on a podcast like me or you're just jamming to the music. Also, you can download the Lytmi Connect app from the App Store or Google Play. It lets you customize touch controls, adjust your EQ sound, all that kind of stuff, so you can actually set these to your exact preferences. And because you're a member of the Tapped In family, you're going to get 10% off if you put your order on the official website. Promo code TappedOutPod. That link is in the show notes, and we will, of course, advertise it on social media. Again, 10% off on the official website with the promo code TappedOutPod, or run on over to Amazon. They're doing a limited time $20 discount coupon, and again, that link is in the notes as well. So remember, if you want sharp, top-tier sound, all-day comfort on your ears, customizable controls, man, don't wait. Go grab your Lytmi Cozy Fit G1 earbuds today. Now back to the show. That's right, man. Check them out. Like I said, like the video said, it is in the show notes. Both links straight to the actual official website. Enter promo code TappedOutPod, get 10% off, or head over to Amazon and pick up if you're an Amazon guy or girl. We get it. Hey, absolutely check them out over on Amazon. The Lytmi Cozy Fit G1s. Hey, I've been rocking them now for a couple weeks now and really digging them. So grab yours too, man.
Well, I'm hoping when I get mine that I'll be able to figure out the Bluetooth on this computer that I am using. It doesn't seem to be Bluetooth friendly, but excited to get mine in the mail. Let's jump into the real indie talk. And you mentioned earlier perhaps a controversial topic to start off with. And we probably need to do a Patreon about why this was a topic for the week. We want to talk about the pros and cons of a promotion having a money mark. We got 3 pros and 3 cons because we want to be fair and balanced. But I know before we jumped into this, we wanted to kind of set the playing field, lay a foundation of what you and I mean when we use the term money mark.
Right, because look, we talked about, like, from a perspective of, oh, you just have somebody who's giving you money, like, oh, does that not always does that make a money mark.
Yes.
Like we kind of classified it. There's probably what we would call 2 categories. There, you legit sponsors, and then there's the money mark. And it's kind of 2 different things. And I think we got to be fair when we kind of like put people in those categories, because that's a huge difference between the 2.
Right. Absolutely. And because I absolutely think most of the time the term money mark is used as a derogatory term, but there are some pros to having a money mark. First of all, being a money mark can bring your promotion financial stability.
I mean, yeah, man. Like, look, it means, here's the thing. Anytime you're running your show, if you have somebody who's fronting the capital and let's say you've got a budget, I mean, it kind of helps you when you're trying to decide on your venue, your talent, your travel, all those expenses you've got. I mean, it kind of makes it easy because, like, we know a lot of promotions. The argument sometimes is simply just trying to actually, like, budget those things, because if you overshoot your budget, you may be doomed from day one that you're not even going to break even. But if you know for up front, like, hey, we've got X amount, you can basically almost try to budget everything within that budget, and you're like, hey, at least we know we're not going out. I'm not sure how the sponsor / money mark feels about it, because you're not going negative, but they may not be, but again, it's, do they want their money back, or what are they getting in return? I think that's a huge difference between those 2.
Right. And I think if you know, hey, and you've got somebody who, I'm giving you this much a show, and you kind of can get some stability and make some long-term plans. Because let's say they give you $1,000. Well, you can make the decision not to use all that on the first show. You could kind of spread that out, and it gives you, again, the key word there is some flexibility. It's becoming harder and harder. I was talking to a friend who has been in wrestling and thinking about getting back into wrestling, and we were talking about ticket prices, and they were talking about keeping ticket prices low because they're going to have some sponsors and because they're going to have some financial backing. And so it can make a big difference in how you draw fans. And that kind of leads to the second point, is having the right kind of money mark can give you a lot of increased exposure.
Right, because I mean, look, depending on a lot of it, you've got that potential, because you also have to kind of realize, where's the source coming from? Like, right. Is this somebody who's, like, well connected, whether it's through media, whether it's through sponsorships, whether it's through the community, whatever. Like if they're giving you money, they have a vested interest in kind of putting you out there, so you could maybe even more so than just your traditional streams of, hey, we got to paper the town or social media ads or whatever. There are other ways that you can get out there even more so.
I think it allows you to really expand your advertising options. I mean, you think about it, if you have not been doing any social media ads, and now you're going to do $100 a show on Facebook ads, that could literally, depending on your market, get your product in front of thousands of more eyeballs. Where and when I travel, I was up in North Carolina this weekend, and on my Facebook, I'm starting to get ads for North Carolina. And as I'm driving down to the Mullican Bunker at the undisclosed location this week, as I'm driving, I'm starting to get targeted ads. And so it gives you an opportunity to put money into that and get your product in front of more eyeballs. And finally, probably the biggest one is having a good money mark can get you access to improved talent and production.
Well, look, and that one hits close to home because we know in Georgia specifically, there are people that sponsor matches. They outright like, hey, I want to see a bigger name or whatever. And that's because those funds are there. Sometimes, like you said, you're like, hey, man, we can go a little above the local talents. We can go out and bring in bigger names, whether look, a lot of guys that were signed talents who've been released and now they're out on the indies. They normally wouldn't be in your budget. But now if you've got somebody who's just kind of giving you that little extra, you're like, well, maybe we do have $1,500 for this guy, or maybe we do have $1,000 for this guy, or et cetera, et cetera. And that just can, again, take the beauty. Here's why I like this, and I may be stealing a lot of thunder here. The reason I'm a fan of doing this is if you can bring in a guy that's got a big name and it's not going to kill your budget and put him up against your top star and make your top star elevated based off of a match with that guy, sometimes it's like it's an investment into the future of this guy who is your top guy. And that's available because you've got that budget that you normally maybe not have.
I think the mistake in this is there are definitely some names you bring in and they are not interested at all in helping your promotion. They are interested in getting paid, and that's it. But there are so many great professional wrestlers, legends, people who have recently been on TV who get it, and they know, hey, I'm getting paid not just to appear, I'm getting paid to bring value for tonight and the next show and the next show. That money can also help better lighting, better sound equipment, better camera. Maybe now, instead of just paying one camera person, you can pay two camera, or just simply pay your camera people. And I especially think as more shows are going on YouTube and Twitch and IWTV, the production value is so key because so many more fans are consuming content through streaming products. Now, on the flip side of that, there are definitely some cons to having a money mark. First of all, is if this person has a lack of wrestling knowledge, that is where kind of the mark part of the money mark comes in. And if that money mark does not understand wrestling, if they don't understand wrestling, they may have a passion for it, but if they don't know the business side of things and they're giving you money, but they're wanting to make decisions based purely on emotion, then that's not going to work out good for anybody.
Right, because a lot of times when you get in, and look, by the way, I always tell people all the time because everybody has an opinion, a feeling of what they want. The problem is at the second that guy's giving you that money, he may be trying to say, like, making decisions that he thinks people want to see, but it's not necessarily what people want to see. Or even worse, we've seen in the past where they have a different vision outright. Like the company and the promotion runs a certain way, a certain direction. And we've seen in the past where all of a sudden, like, why are they doing that? That makes like that is so out of character for them. Not even for the sake of, I'm trying to think of the right words here, is it's just not something that promotion or the people running that promotion would do. So then all of a sudden it kind of confuses the market in the sense of, wait, are they doing this or this? Like what direction are they going in? And then the storylines stop making sense, and like it doesn't even make business sense for their model. All of those kind of things. That's kind of the next step that could be the issue.
Right. And if they come in, they don't understand your market. I remember talking to a guy one time. He wanted to give us some money. He's like, hey, I want to bring in this person. I'm like, that person's not going to draw anybody. They're not going to add any value to our. Basically, I was like, no one's going to pay to see them. Like you still remember them from the Attitude Era, and it was a big deal for you. But I'm just telling you, in this year, I totally get what you're saying. Like, and if you want to spend the money, that's great. But you basically might as well light it on fire. You kind of touched on this, and that's oftentimes when there become creative control issues with the money mark.
Well, this is the biggest uphill battle.
Yes,
because the second they're giving you the money, there is a not all, again, this goes back to where it could be the issue. Then they feel like they have some creative control. Like, I get to put in. I get to help with stories. I get to push, because there does create that wall of eventually, well, I'm giving you money. What do you say to that guy? Because he is.
Yeah. Eventually, with most, and this is just human nature, you get to a point where you start asking, what's in this for me? Mm-hmm. Like, if I am paying for this, then I should get to decide what's going to happen, especially if they've been putting money into a show and they are not seeing a return on their investment. And I'm not even talking about money. Like, if somebody's putting a lot of money into a show and you're drawing 55 people, they may take a step back and like, what are you doing? Like, do you even know what you're doing with this? And it can really create tension. And once that tension happens, that leads to our third con, and that is financial dependency.
Right. Because at some point, if things aren't going well, this guy gets to decide, I'm out. I'm going to pull my money. No more money. It just, and then what does the promotion do because here's the thing. We have learned as of recently, when people just back out of things unannounced, it throws chaos into everything, because you could have a storyline. Like, let's say you're bringing in a big money guy because you're under the impression we're going to have this money for the next 3 or 4 shows. So you're doing a storyline with this guy. Then the financial guy pulls away. Okay, can we still afford that guy?
Right. And we have seen, it happens multiple times a year where the financial backing kind of backs off, pulls out, and the promotion just dies. There was a promotion in South Carolina that was running a huge show, and the money mark said, oh yeah, I can give you $10,000. This was known as the Black Christmas debacle several years ago, where the guy showed up and said, they kept telling him, hey, we're going to need cash. He shows up. He starts writing bad checks, and ended up the promoter had to kind of basically find the money. And there were a lot of big name television talents on that show that I still don't know if they've been paid for appearing. And if you Google Black Christmas debacle double dropkick show, you'll see a long article about it. But we have just, let's be very honest and transparent. What sparked this conversation were some recent events we had heard about, where basically every nightmare you could think of with a money backer has started to happen. And it's just, for promotions and promoters, it can seem like, oh man, this person's going to give us some money. And sometimes if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true.
But hold on, and then we want to be fair though, because like I said, we prefaced at the beginning, and I kind of want to bring it full circle back to the end. Like, look, there are good, and again, I think it's because of that term. I think there's a very fine line between when you have a sponsor and when you have the money mark. There are a lot of legitimate sponsors out there. And look, there's a couple
Yes.
promotions that we know that
Yes.
have lockdown sponsors that do a great job. They basically are like, hey, we're here to help. We're not asking to be in the storylines. We're not asking to be, whatever. They're just like, hey, we're legit trying to just help the product here along the way. Look, but that's always there. The fear is always there. That's the problem. It is always there. But we know of where they've bought rings and they've bought help with equipment and all that kind of stuff. That's what you want. You want a very hands-off sponsor.
Yes.
You don't want somebody who's I got to have my fingers in everything money mark because I paid you money. It's my right to do that. The second you can see that person has a right to get in there, that's where the red flags start to come up, in my opinion.
Yeah, we had a great sponsor, and we had a title called the Next Level title, and he was our next level sponsor. And basically, all he asked, "Hey, can I present the belt to the winner?" Yeah, you could absolutely do that, and that was such a thrill for him because he loved wrestling, and he was just great. When you listen, and I'm preaching to the choir here. When you have great sponsors, it is such a beautiful thing because you're delivering value for them. And if your sponsor is a pro wrestling fan, you're scratching an itch for them too, that they can be a part of it. They can come to your show. And a lot of times when the sponsors come to your show, if they're a good sponsor, they're going to be loud, they're going to be boisterous, and they're going to bring some people with them.
And listen, I'm firsthand account. This is one of those stories where I'm like, listen, I can speak from experience. When we ran our show, Hell Freezes Over, we literally had a sponsor that literally covered the show, the expenses of the show. All they asked was, we want to have one match specifically announced that it was sponsored by them and hold our banner up at the end of the match. And I'm like, that's it? And they're like, yes. That's a win. I'm like, you can't get any better than that, in my opinion. Because look, I already had enough, and this is not negative, by the way. I already had enough people that had creative control because we were like having matches where promotions were defending their title. Right. I already had enough of people that were involved in I didn't want anybody else coming in and saying, oh, but we want you to do this. And I couldn't afford that. I already had enough of that.
Right.
So that's a sponsor. I always tell people, so when I talk to people about sponsors, I'm like, that is the epitome of a sponsor.
Yes, absolutely. All the things we just talked about, good promotion, good creative, good relationships with sponsors, leads us to our next story, and that is this past Sunday, Kraken Pro Wrestling, led by Promoter of the Year Sam Skaggs, hit 150 down there in Tifton, Georgia, and kudos to this promotion. Their year anniversary's got to be coming up. They just launched last year, but the growth of this promotion, not just in crowd size, but in influence, becoming a place that people want to work. I just can't say enough good things about Kraken Pro Wrestling.
Look, hard work pays off. I mean, look, like you said, Promoter of the Year, Sam Skaggs, he's on the local news there doing stuff multiple times. He's brought talents on there now. So it's like he's exposing the talents on the local news. They're super involved. He is super involved in the community. They go out of their way to do anything and everything, and to look, hey, look, because I understand there's probably somebody out there listening and goes, wait, you guys are like putting them over the moon that they drew 150, right? We the promotions in our town draw 500, whatever. You have no idea. Because you don't have any idea how burned to the ground that wrestling market was. For them to literally have this community, not only like a few are coming out, like embracing them into the community and literally getting invested. So like, I've been to that show and I've seen it personally, how invested. It's not just Huckabee's telling really good stories there. That's, he's booking those stories and he's doing a great job there. Hanson's out there doing the hard work, promoting and putting the talents are invested. You can see it at the intermissions, the way they're coming out, just mingling with the crowd and getting everybody. It's a great big party at intermission, getting the people the buy-in. The buy-in from the crowd is what's working here. And I would not be surprised if we can see even more continued growth out of this. So, yeah, I mean, it sounds like, oh, it's 150. Yeah, no, it's 150. Like, this is, if you were there at day one and watched the growth over that time period, this is a win. By the way, here's the catcher. It's not just a win for Kraken, folks. This is a win for Georgia wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
I teased a map that I shared on social media, and it was hilarious because I knew it was going to get a reaction. Sam Skaggs said, like, who's that lone one way down there all by itself in South Georgia? That's them. That's what I'm talking about. If that market, and look, and I'm not talking about just Tifton, if 30 minutes west or 30 minutes, a little bit away, if that market can be rebuilt to where people in South Georgia trust wrestling again,
mm-hmm.
It's going to take good promoters to do it the right way. That's a big win, because when we talk about how many promotions are here, look at that map I put on my social media. It is very heavy at the top and very light at the bottom. We need to fill in that bottom, and more good promotions that do it the right way like Kraken can help.
Here's the impact Kraken has had on Georgia wrestling. Before Kraken, Augusta was considered South Georgia because it was simply below Atlanta. Augusta, as has been pointed out to by many of my friends, Augusta is East Georgia. Tifton is legit South Georgia. They're drawing 150 in a town that has a population of about 17,000 people. There are promotions running in areas that have 2 times, 5 times, 8 times a bigger population, not drawing as many as Kraken. And it's because of the hard work in promoting, but I also think they're putting together some compelling storylines. And if you want to hear more about that, you can watch the Georgia Wrestling Spotlight this week over on Patreon. So kudos to those folks and the whole booking team and everybody, the talents. They're just doing it the right way.
Yep.
Also, we talked about it last week. The big WXW 16 Carat tournament took place over in Germany over the weekend. And I don't know if you can call this an upset, but former Action Wrestling World Heavyweight Champion, One Called Manders, came out with a win. He defeated Daisuke Sekimoto, Masha Slamovich, Leon Slater, and in the finals defeated Ahura to become the 16 Karat Gold tournament champion. And this is a prestigious tournament. We have been talking about this for the last several weeks since we heard that Manders and Adam Priest was going to be there. Adam Priest lost in the first round. This tournament's been going on for about 20 years, and it's a who's who of people who are wrestling on TV every week, including the former Tommy N, a.k.a. Aleister Black, a guy named El Generico, Sami Zayn, Jonathan Gresham, Zack Sabre Jr., and now One Called Manders adds his name to this prestigious list.
Look, because this thing does have lots of history, that's the big thing. It's, we can talk about just the winners, but here's the thing. These are competitors from all over the world. Mm-hmm. This is not just like, look, no disrespect. If you won a tournament and it was like, hey, it was the best wrestlers in Georgia, that's a good accomplishment. If you said in the Southeast, I've been to some of those, by the way.
Yeah.
Those are good too. If you said the United States, hey, we're getting big. We're really getting big time. This is the world, man. They brought, like I said, there are wrestlers from all over the world. And this guy that you had the opportunity to see at Action Wrestling is your winner. Like, that's a big win for just when you start backpedaling it, U.S. wrestling, Georgia wrestling, Action Wrestling. Manders is a guy who, by the way, is all over the place. He's all over obviously the world in this tournament, but generally he's all over the country wrestling. So, I'm not sitting here banging the drum that he's a Georgia guy, but you could have paid to see him at Action Wrestling.
Yes. Yes.
And it is also, let me ask you a question. Is that this is a question. I don't know how I'm going to get away with this one, but I'm going to put it out there. What does it say that the guy who won this tournament pretty much was only booked at Action?
Yeah. That's a factual statement. He only works for one promotion in Georgia. in a state that has very few exclusive talents. Uh, One Called Manders is one of them. Gunnar Miller's another one. He's working only Southern Honor. You can probably count on one hand. Now, let me preface this. There's a lot of exclusive talents that are on the wrong end of exclusive. Like they can only get booked by one promotion. We're talking about guys that could be working everywhere. So yeah, we saw one of the best moments we saw live last year was Manders beating Alex Kane for that action title. It was such a culmination of a journey for him. And one thing too that I was thinking about, SCIs this summer, planning on being at that, but with the fall of PWG, they used to have their Battle of Los Angeles every year. And that was one of my favorite tournaments to watch. Like we would get the DVD and we would watch it every single year. And there's kind of a void there that there's not this super indie, all-star tournament in the United States. And so maybe that can be Hell Freezes Over 2 or something.
I'm going to need a sponsor. Because that was going to be my question. Is there a promotion in Georgia that has go back to the financial stability part we discussed before this, because it would take to pull off something like this, it would take, an investment. This may not even be hey, this is going to be a loss leader product for us. Like, we're going to put our name out there. We understand we may not make money back on this. But is there a promotion out there that could do this or that would do this? That's a good question, I think. And by the way, before we get too far into this, I want to say, okay, Adam Priest was in this tournament. The question becomes, is this something more guys need to look into to get their, to get on, hey, you can be the best in Georgia, you can do whatever, but is there a thing that this is hey, try to get on more, one of these kind of things to elevate you so, a WWE sees you, AEW sees you more? Does this... I don't know. Let me ask you a question. I think it does, by the way. I'm going to outright say I do. I do think it does. This, to me, this is a good resume builder, to have on your resume that hey, I'm in the States, but I went to Germany, had this, I was in this tournament, because we even joked about not just the winners, but we looked at some of the, runner-ups. Yeah. Bryan Danielson was in this thing, and was a runner-up. Walter was in this thing, back in the day, the Gunther's, former alias or whatever. So I think there's a lot of prestige to it. So, kudos for One Called Manders, not only, taking a gamble and a risk and going over there, but also winning this thing.
Yeah, I think in the current state of wrestling, it would not surprise me because WWE has people watching this stuff. Gabe Sapolsky's watching that stuff. I mean, they have guys with their eyes and ears on independent wrestling. It would not surprise me if within a couple of years you see a WWE or NXT talent in that tournament. That's the season of wrestling we're in. Is you never know who's going to show up where. We've got Natalia and the NWA coming up as part of the Crockett Cup. I would not be surprised to see.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Do you think if next year, look, this is year 9. When we hit August this year, it'll be year 9. I made a claim 4 years ago, whatever, that if we hit 10 years that I would run, Hell Freezes Over 2.
Yeah.
Is it this type of a tournament, or is it a tournament where do you think 8 promotions in Georgia are willing to put their champions in a tournament? And we get down to who's the, the true champion of whatever. We'll come up with a trophy, whether or whatever, to where all of the champion, is there 8 promotions that are put our guy in? Because there's a risk is your guy's going to lose in the first round.
I'm right there with you. Okay. But I don't think that would be the right way to go, because all those guys the following week have to defend their title on their show.
Correct.
So I think if we could get the right sponsor, tabletpod@gmail.com. I think doing something, having some Georgia. I mean, I think go big or go home. Of course, What do I know? But I agree with you. I think your idea about the Georgia tournament is great, but you'd
Or do you
have a
go bigger?
lot of
Like,
cooks
look,
in
I've
the
got some
kitchen.
connections. Ray Fury out of the Louisiana, Mississippi area, like a Cruel and Alan Angels, who's out west. He's the Prestige champion. And look, I know some of those still are local, but they're national
Right,
independent talents. And
right.
bringing those and going aboard and with some local guy. Yeah, maybe that's the pitch. Again, sponsors tappedoutpod@gmail.com. We got a year and a half to plan this thing.
To me, I would say I would go back to the original UFC where they were like, we're going to put a karate guy against a kickboxer, against a boxer, against a wrestler. To me, the interest would be, I got a Cruel in this tournament. I got an Allen Angels. I got somebody like a Jonathan Gresham or Ray. Like, what if you got all these different styles
Mm-hmm.
and you created these matches that nobody had ever seen in Georgia, but they were matches people wanted to see? Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah. Stipulations of nobody that has or like no signed talents on the card. It's got
Right.
to be like a king of the indies or whatever, something type of it. Yeah, okay, I got you. We're on board.
Do a check and see if that name is the King of the Indies. I'm pretty sure that's already taken or something. Speaking of Kings of the Indies, let's get into this week's underrated and underappreciated as we look at various talents, people, promotions who maybe aren't getting the love we feel like they deserve. And so it's our job, it's our responsibility to give it to them. First of all, this guy has.
Well, hold on. I got to
Yeah.
correct myself. I put these notes together, and then we went 2 slots later on
Mm-hmm.
our show notes. He's in this group. So I kind of think we got to like just merge them all in one and do the group and then kind of share that love across the board. And I'll preface as to why I had him out separate at one point, but go ahead.
Yes, yes, yeah. First of all is Dominic Stuckey, who is doing great work. Has also getting out there more, wrestling in more promotions than he had in the past, but just is one of the most consistent and what's the word of consistent. I mean, he's just consistent. When was the last time you saw a bad Dominic Stuckey match? And I think what the point you're trying to make is kind of leading to our second one is we want to put the whole crusade in there. And I think that's one of the reasons Dominic Stuckey being a part of that group has elevated him, but it's also elevated that whole group.
Right. And look, it's I was specifically sitting at a Southern Fried show and was watching Dominic Stuckey wrestle and literally put it in my notes then, like the next time we do underrated, underappreciated, he's going in. And again, so it was partially because of the crusade, but yeah, I 100% saw, I was like, guys got to go in. But then too, like you said, the crusade, it's across the board. Obviously, Hunter James is all over Georgia now, and I'm happy for that. I've said like he needed to hit some more areas. He needed to be in more promotions. My next challenge is going to be once he's in the comfort zone of that, it needs to be more southeast or national. Like he needs to hit the road even more so. Pat Roach and Grillo with a team you didn't know you needed until you got it.
Yes.
They are about as, by the way, as the most easily hateable team. For some reason, like it is not a stretch to sit there and go because of how they act and their behaviors and all that. They are heels. They embrace it. They're not trying to be cool heels, anything like that. They know you don't like them. They don't care, and they live that to the fullest. Look, lots of other people, the Crusade as a whole, I'm all on board with them. Dominic Stuckey, Te'ao, Joey Hyder, that group in general. And again, this is why I think, look, again, don't have to like techniques, tactics, whatever you want to call it. But now Joey Hyder showing up in more places, like even more so. So like it is spinning into a sense of, okay, the more these guys are getting some exposure across the state, literally is this the Crusades march across Georgia, to actually hit all of these promotions and capture gold, because that's kind of what it seems to be the mission.
Let me throw out a booking idea for you. You can shoot this down. You got this thing going on in SCA now, Apocalypse Championship Wrestling or Apocalypse Pro Wrestling, where you got the Apocalypse. They've taken over. They run everything. Would Jonathan Feltner get so desperate that he brings in the Crusade to take care of Apocalypse? And what would that even look like? That to beat to beat this dirty scoundrelous team, you got to play even dirtier, and you got to bring in this group. I don't know. Who knows what would happen with that?
That would be I mean, whew. Well, look, I mean, they like Hunter there, so why not? I mean, you got to look. All's fair in love and war, and you got to do what you got to do sometimes. So I wouldn't put it. Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough reach, but I would never say never.
Right. We also want to give a shout out to Kraken Pro Wrestling. We mentioned them earlier. They're getting more and more on everybody's radar. I think more. I don't think they're underrated and underappreciated with the boys anymore. Which is obvious from Skaggs' win as promoter of the year. But I do think fans in that Tifton area, they gotta get out there and support the show even more.
I teased it. Are they down there single handedly, like trying to rebuild this, the market?
Yeah. How long before there's another promotion?
Yeah.
Down there. And that to me, yeah. So they're doing really, really doing great work. Have I mentioned how much I love their title belts? Just
they
so
are
unique
so awesome.
And so good. Here's a name. Vari Morales continues to do great stuff with Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. Also going to be a big part once Disruptor gets relaunched. And just so is there a guy in Georgia that's smoother in the ring than Vari Morales?
Nope. I don't. Here's the thing: we almost need to. Do we need to maybe at some point somebody's on a list so many times that we named the list? It's the Vari Morales underrated, underappreciated award. There's somebody I hate to say this, but Matt Griffin lives on the Power 5. Does it become the Matt Griffin, Power 5 or something like that? But Vari Morales, man, is a guy that when I see him, look here, I don't know why more don't use him because I'll put this plain and simple. Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling, in my opinion, it is what it is one of the best promotions in the state of Georgia. They believe in this guy so much, and they recognize his talents that he's front and center on posters, a lot of posters. They got a show coming up in Jefferson, and he's literally the front guy. He's in front of guys who have been on TV. Like come on.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure why the other promotions don't. Other than the fact, look, full disclosure, the guy knows what he's worth.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the problem. But when it comes to the in-ring, I, hands down, without a doubt, am like, he's one of the best in Georgia. And it just doesn't seem to be recognized across the board, and I can't figure that part out.
Yes. One person I'd like to see Vari Morales wrestle is the next person on this list, and that is Sal Renaro, who had a great 2024. Was out a little bit with an injury, has come back in 2025, Southern Fried Heavyweight Champion. Also, we'll talk about the Jimmy Rave Cup on the Spotlight this week. Sauronaro is almost like, and Sauronaro is not an old guy, but he's like the ageless wonder. Like he has not lost a step.
Here, Nick, how can a guy who's the Southern Fried Championship Wrestling heavyweight champion be underrated? It's, to me, there were times where I used to make a case for in football that Peyton Manning was underrated and underappreciated because even though he was given all the praise, I didn't think it was enough. Sauronaro
Right.
falls in that case. Sauronaro will throw up in his mouth knowing that I called him the Peyton Manning in Georgia, right? He probably he would prefer a Raider,
Yeah.
over a Colt, I'm sure. Especially a guy who went to Denver and ended up winning a Super Bowl for him. That was probably bad that was bad on my part. Sorry, Sal. But Sauronaro can go in there and do brawl. He can do, technical wrestling. He can give you anything you want. And in case you missed it, and again, we are going to discuss a little bit about, so check out the Georgia Wrestling Spotlight. He had a match this weekend versus Alexander Lev that was off the charts good that I sat and watched on Twitch. That's, Sauronaro is the man. And look, here's why I think he's underrated and appreciated. Everybody at times will give him his credit for what he does in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that people, if you sit there and talk with Sauronaro, and if you're a young talent, this is the underrated, underappreciated, probably more than anything part of Sauronaro. Anytime you're in a locker room with Sauronaro, you should be picking his brain. That guy has forgotten more about wrestling than I'll ever know, and I will fully throw that out there. The guy has a mind for wrestling and will literally tweak a little thing for you, and it'll make all the difference in the world because he gets wrestling. It's that simple. He gets it.
Sauronaro, I hope it. Well, I mean, I hope you don't have to get. Sauronaro is an agent for a major wrestling promotion, and has agented matches. And if you haven't seen the match he had with Caleb Conley at AWE's last show, that's a show that if you said, "Hey, I'd like to nominate this match for Match of the Year in Georgia," I'm like, "Yeah, go ahead. I'd have no objection to that." So, again, lots of love for Sal, but not quite enough, in our opinion. Nick mentioned the Georgia Wrestling Spotlight, where we're going to talk about the Jimmy Rave Cup that happened at Atlanta Wrestling Entertainment over the weekend. You can check that out, the Georgia Wrestling Spotlight. And the only place to watch that is Patreon, patreon.com/taptoutpod. Create a free account, costs you absolutely nothing to get the Georgia Wrestling Spotlight every week. And just for $1, you'll start getting the shows early. You get the show notes. Again, I am looking here in my Google Doc, 16 pages of notes. We're not going to get to all of it. We didn't get to all of it. You can read everything we had on the pros and cons of a money mark. That's worth $1 right there. So be a money mark and become a patron today at patreon.com/tappedoutpod. And as always, if you've got any thoughts, suggestions, or pushback, hey, maybe you just think we're a bunch of idiots, tappedoutpod@gmail.com is where you can send your hate mail, your love, and all the good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, look, we always embrace it, like constructive, as I always say. Like, just kind of throwing out stupid stuff doesn't work. But I mean, I'll just delete that. But if it's constructive, whether it's things you like, things you don't like, things you'd like to see more of on either show for that matter, tappedoutpod@gmail.com. That's the best way to get a hold of us. And if you're a Patreon member, you can message us directly inside of Patreon. You could shoot me a message, and anybody who's ever done it knows I respond. I keep I have every app that so if you send something on Patreon or if you send something to our email, I'm pretty quick to, respond back. I mean, even, as much as I can, if I'm not in a work meeting or something like that, I promise you I'll get to you as soon as I have the ability to check it. Because I feel like, look, if you guys are investing money into us and you're a Patreon member, I owe it to you to get back to you as soon as possible. But I'm that way at work too. That's a whole other conversation, but
Yes, we're the hardest working men in show business, as you know. But fans, again, thank you so much for your support. We have loved this so much over the last year. We just kind of passed a year doing this that now we're doing 2 shows. That's how much we love Georgia independent wrestling. But we couldn't do it without you and your support. So for Nick McDaniel, this is Heath Mulliken, and we'll see you at the matches.